Yeah. I'm here. This is BX Blues for the divinenature.net. BX Blues for the divinenature.net. And I'm going to review the title of my message today is Worldviews in Conflict, Atheism, the Ungrounding of Logic, Reality, and Ethics. I'm going to cover a podcast of a gentleman who calls himself Mr. X. What is his name? Mr. X 2025. I think he's now Mr. X, just Mr. Plain old Mr. X. He's on here. I don't know how long he's been on this app, on these stereo streets, but he's got a lot of extreme thoughts and a lot of hatred. That's my judgment alone, hatred of religion and Christianity. Okay, why? Okay, I liken a lot of the arguments that he used as a comforter that has holes in it. He's freezing, it's cold, but he still wants to warm up to this blanket as though it has real warmth to it. Okay, but it's holy. It's ripping up, it's all tore up from the floor up, and he can't, if he covers his head, he can't cover his feet. If he covers his feet, he can't cover his head. It's all tattered up, and you will see, because I'm going to review his argumentation, and we're going to try to answer this young man who has all of this antagonism towards Christianity. Why? There's a lot of serious trauma out there, folks. A lot of reasons why people hating on Christianity, and specifically Christianity, because I am Christian, and I'll come at this from a Christian worldview perspective. Okay, so that's how I'm answering these things. But he has a general hatred, or hatred of religion in general, and there are people out there that do have a lot of it, and they just don't want to hear it. But they don't want to sit down, and they don't want to consider the foundations of logic, of the reality, of what is truth and what is good, what is bad. They will not have any foundation for that, because they have to invent a foundation for that in order to make their point. Okay, and then, so they have to rely on the subjectivity and relativity of all of these things, and they make themselves God in order to create a standard for these things, and we'll see. So let's review some of these messages. I'm here on the stereo app. I may not be able to answer questions very fluidly because I'm trying to go through some of these arguments here on this video. Let's see. Let's open this up now.
Well, three. I can't remember the other two, but most,
just like anyone else, there's so many denominations. It's ridiculous. And the thing is, the Christians aren't supposed to follow Christ. So the whole I'm a Christian just means that you're going against your God, because even Jesus was like, oh, don't follow me, follow God. So anyone who calls himself Christian is a contradiction. Just like Christians that celebrate pagan holidays, I can't take them seriously, and it honestly pisses me off, because it's like, you motherfuckers get to pick and choose, but when it comes to certain things, you don't pick and choose others. It just
I like this. I hear you. I like this. I like this. I like that. None of that. None of that.
To the history of religion, you see that when it comes to power of the government, when it comes to power of the people, it was.
All right, let's see. Is that being? Let me see something. Yeah. Hold on a second. I just want to play that. Let's continue. What is he saying? He's saying so many denominations doesn't mean that just because there's denomination doesn't mean that any of these denominations are true or false. It just means that there are a lot of them. So the argument is that, well, they have so many people, it can't be true because there's so many people with so many different opinions. There's different people that say that strawberry ice cream is the best ice cream there is. Just because there are different opinions on what's the best doesn't mean that isn't one out there that is better to you, right? Okay, so that's just a multiple position and multiple opinion response, answer, or argument. That's it. That's all that means. One of them could still be true, right? One of them could still be true. It's like God. The evidence for God could still be out there. If you've exhausted your search, If you can say, well, I've exhausted, I've gone from here to the very last corner of the universe, and therefore I found that there's no evidence for God, then you say, well, okay, so you got back, welcome back, but it could just be what you will accept as evidence, right? So most atheists will know not to say that they know for a fact that there is no God. They know it's a ridiculous thing to say that, because they would have to have all knowledge in order to say something like that.
Used in order to control. I feel like only poor people believe in miracles, and there are a lot of poor people that believe in God. Truth be told,
It it's 100% been used in that way, shape, and form. It 100% has. Um, I you'd have to be kind of blind to history to not know that or see that. Like it's been used right. Like
poor people believe in miracles, and there are a lot of poor people that believe in God. Truth be told,
it it's 100% been used in that way, shape, and form. It 100% has. I you'd have to be kind of blind to history to not know that or see that. Like it's been used as an oppressive tool. It still is to this day. People are.
So you can say, well, my mother beat me over the head with a skillet when I was a child, but does that mean I'm not going to use it to cook in my kitchen? It should be banned from all kitchens. Does that make sense? Okay, something good could be used for wrong. Okay, you can defend your family with a gun. Okay, if somebody came to try to ravish your whole family, does that mean that gun is evil? Okay, that's the age-old ignorant argument.
Still jacking people for money left, right, center, right?
when you think about American religion and Christianity, it was used to justify a lot of stuff. The whole separation of church and state, the problem of the fact that like you can't pay your bills with praying. You can't pay your bills with.
Hello, can you hear me?
That's what I do to Christians. I'm like, hey, pray. Did God put food on your table, or did you put a food on your table? Did God pay your bills, or did you pay your? It's reality.
So he can't establish what is reality. He can't answer for what reality is, because he has no groundation for what is real. Okay, only what is his sense. Okay, so again, Jesus said, "Don't follow me, follow God." Okay, he didn't say to follow people. Okay, what he did say is, "No one comes to the Father except through me." Right? Okay, Christians, that he mentioned something about Christians that celebrate pagan holidays. Yeah, Christians who practice pagan holidays would be a serious problem, but that's hardly seen today, because these pagan religions where are they? You have to find them out in the boondocks if they're really doing what they're not supposed to be doing. Most wokesters will call Christmas pagan, or Halloween pagan, or Easter pagan, when in fact, that just because pagan religions tried to connect themselves to Christianity in the first and the second centuries doesn't mean we are to cease to celebrate Christ. Okay? Christ coming into the world, which is supposed to be Christmas. Okay? Or celebrate his resurrection, which is Resurrection Day. Some people call it Easter by tradition. Or even Halloween, dressing up our children by tradition, only as a bunny. I would argue, okay, if you have all this blood and skeletons and all that stuff, that's not Christian at all. But that goes beyond the tradition. That has to do with just blood and gore and stuff like that. But if you're dressing up your kid as a cute rabbit to get candy, okay? Come on. There's literally no harm in that. In fact, Christianity has destroyed all things pagan at the cross for over 2,000 years now. Open your eyes, legalists, and stop being so afraid and judgmental. They're bigger fish to fry, let me tell you. Traditions are traditions. You can create a tradition to stay in your family for generations, and it doesn't mean it has to go against the Word of God. Relax. Only poor people believe in miracles, he says. Okay, wrong. There are many wealthy and well-to-do people who are Christian and who have been Christian historically, even inside in the Bible. There were kings and followers of Yahweh who had riches. Queen of Sheba, Abraham, Solomon, they were rich. Okay? The rich man who gave Christ his tomb was a rich man. Most of the Pharisees had big money, right? Just because your mom banged you over the head with a skillet doesn't mean you have to decide not to use a skillet in the kitchen ever again. You don't have to accommodate to that trauma. The Bible teaches that the world is fallen and filled with evil and fallen human beings, and they will use and abuse the truth in God's word to their interests. That's not far-fetched to understand unless you're using that as an excuse not to recognize the truths within the word of God. Okay? Jacking people for money, he says, a tool of control, right? Because people abuse the truth doesn't mean you're not accountable to live according to the truth. You can't complain and make yourself a victim in order to get out of your accountability of truth. It's still truth, and you have to live accountable to it. He says, did God put food on your table, or did you put food on your table? Well, God gave me life, and without life, I couldn't work. Without work, I couldn't get paid. Without a job, I wouldn't be able to buy anything, and without health, I wouldn't have been able to do any of that at all. So, I mean, humble yourself and give thanksgiving for your health and all the good things you have by God's grace. The Bible says God allows the rains to fall on the just and the unjust alike. Okay, so if you are able to have the strength to be able to put food on your table, it was because you had strength, that you had health. You could have been born disabled. Okay, what are the chances of that? That's just you would look at it like a gamble. But then you're not, and you're strong, and you're able to make good money and live well, right? Well enough. And so what I hear is like me, I, my power. But yet it's not by your power that you, just by luck and chance, were not born disabled, right? So then who gets the credit for that? You can't get credit for that. So then who gets the credit? Just chance, luck. Just a gamble. He goes into religious violence. There have been more genocides in the past 100 years by secularists, okay, who rule like kings, and there have been religious wars combined. There's more than the religious wars combined. Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, Hitler, Stalin. Okay, Mao Zedong in communist China, they say that an estimate of like 76 million by 1987. Okay, and with the majority occurring between 1949 and 1987. In the Soviet Union, Stalin, they're saying something nearly 43 million. Okay, largely through forced labor in the camps, in the gulags. Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge regime, killed an estimated 1.5 to 2 million Cambodians only from 75 to 79. Can you imagine that? Representing nearly a quarter of the country's population. Right? Let's continue on with the video.
I don't like people that don't focus in on a reality and aren't true to things, because I don't know. It's really weird being an adult as someone who grew up just looking at all these grown adults. It's basically a sky imaginary daddy. It's the most perverted thing I could think of. The problem is a lot of people have passed through the religion because of the Crusades, because of people being politically and I guess you could say religiously. Like there's so many religious violence that I can't overlook it. And just because someone wants to,
absolutely sure, is it objectively true that there is no God?
I would have to say yes. There's no God, because whenever tragedy happens, because they say God is all powerful, God is all knowing, until a tragedy happens that can be cleared up with prayers and hopes. Like, for instance, COVID-19, all the destruction that's going on in the world. Neil deGrasse Tyson said, God is either not all powerful or not all good. And I love that because it's probably true.
So Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's not a philosopher. So he probably is not looking to answer the big philosophical questions of life. Okay, he's a scientist. I think he's an astrophysicist or something like that. When he says God is neither not all powerful or not all good, he's talking from Epicurus, who said that first in the 4th century. Okay, the argument that God is either not all powerful or not all good is a modern phrasing of the problem of evil, which was first articulated by the ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus. But while it might speak of an unknown God in deism, it doesn't speak for the God who has made himself known in the Christian scriptures, which existed even in Epicurean times, which teaches that God's revelation demonstrates that the world is fallen from as early as the first book, Genesis. And God's judgment for sin is death. That's one of the first things that the Word of God teaches. So Epicurus didn't have an excuse, and neither does Neil deGrasse Tyson, and neither does Mr. X. Okay? That's just how it is.
It's either not all powerful like people make it, or it's not all good. And that makes more sense because you can't flood the earth, kill your only son, etc., and be looked at as a good God. You know what I mean?
I hear you there.
By the way, you are indoctrinated, just like anything else for indoctrinations. You only know that because it's been told to you. No human on earth came up with that concept before the other ones before them. It's just
So, okay, you said something about indoctrination, but it's like, okay, indoctrination just means that somebody conditioned you into a philosophy or belief system, whatever. But it doesn't also speak in terms of, I mean, it has a negative connotation to it in this being used in this culture. But if you're being indoctrinated into something true, then is it negative? Okay, it's always indoctrination with this connotation of it being negative. But that's how you learn too, right? You know, he says you can't flood the earth, kill your own son, and be looked at as a good God. Well, there's the problem of context, which he refuses to see here, or he sees it and rebels against it. You have to ignore the context and massive amounts of narrative in order to make a statement like that. That's like me taking a popular work of expression, whether it's a movie, a book, an art piece, and put my own narrative on it in order to unfairly criticize the author. It's like saying all of J.R.R. Tolkien's written books or Shakespeare's books are about how to have wild orgies. Okay? That's what I'm saying. Okay? That's what it's about. Oh, you didn't know? Yeah, imagine that. Okay? It's dishonest and lazy scholarship. You have to ignore all context and narrative of the text in order to add a different narrative to it. Most people do that because they're in rebellion to the truth, because they don't do that with any other historical material. They prove themselves to be non-serious or hateful liars, dishonest scholars. Okay? But the bigger problem he has with this is that he's giving an opinion of what is evil and good without establishing his standard for evil and good. If God establishes a standard of good and evil in the text, you can't use his standard of good and evil because you're trying to refute him and you're trying to call him evil and that standard. Okay, therefore, you have to come up with a different standard of good and evil to suit your worldview and in order to prove God is evil. If you can do that, then you can establish your worldview. How does he know what is good and evil? From what source is he judging anything as evil or good? Or are we to just take his word for it when he says and he makes his personal claims as to what is good and what is evil just because he claims it? Okay? He says he has to borrow from God's standard of evil so that he can come back around and accuse God of evil while perverting the narrative of the text. Okay? You see what he's doing? So, and he's not happy when he gets called out on it. He just cuts off my messages halfway and just belligerently dismisses the conversation because he just can't deal with it. Okay? Again, if he's going to talk about indoctrination, you are indoctrinated. You're indoctrinated. Somebody taught you this. Well, indoctrination is only as bad as if you're being indoctrinated in something bad, which he hasn't proven. In this case, he's been indoctrinated by people who know a lot of things that just are not true. And yet, he doesn't see that as bad. So that is actual bad indoctrination. Okay? I don't mind being indoctrinated as long as it's something truthful and good. Everything we know because it's something that's been already taught to us. Okay? So what? I'm supposed to wake up one day and just know algebra from osmosis? Okay, that makes that makes no sense. Somebody's got to teach us something, all right? We got to learn from somewhere. There's got to be an authority somewhere. The Bible instructs us to teach our children. And why wouldn't you want to pass on wisdom of life to your children? That's what parents are supposed to do, right?
Stories and tradition. I can't knock stories and tradition, but there's a difference between truth and a story.
I equate it to almost like you would with like a child.
Could you be possibly wrong?
Wait, hold on. Before we play messages, let's just say, hey, we're going to play the message, especially not when someone's speaking.
Yeah, no, don't do that. Do that.
Go ahead and continue what you're saying, and then we'll get his message.
Since that's how I picture it. So you got your good and your evil, and then there's the trite and the fucking the fight and the push and the pull, and then the good side, bad side sort of a thing. And like it's just that's how I view it. It does get far more complicated, but there are some things that you should take literally in certain parts of certain things. But then there's I was watching this dude on I don't know if you know about Andrew Wilson on the
Lose his messages.
Oh,
to be taught.
Go ahead and hit it up.
Actually, everything in life is taught. Okay, even you have to be taught how to speak, how to do math. The basic things of life need to be taught, right? And you have to learn the process of learning. So I was taught about God from the general and the revelation that's in the scriptures. And I just didn't take it at face value, but I seen the historicity behind it. And I applied a faith to that, right? I recognize that this world could not have just happened by accident. I think it's kind of foolish to assume that it would, because some things can be simplified, some things can't. If you're going to talk about the science of how a rocket flies to the moon, you can't just simplify it. You have to learn the arithmetic and the algebra and the physics of it. So you kind of have to delve into the complexities. When it comes to the origins of life, you can't just stay in the realm of the simplicity. You have to study it and search further. And I believe it was God that gave us the critical thinking and the mind.
I'm going to reply to this, and I'm going to let you give it a go. One of the things that Christians or religious people conflate is science and religion as them being the same. They're not. Like the whole situation of like prophets and everything, it's a bunch of lies. It's a bunch of people coming together, making up things. I can prove 2 + 2 = 2. You cannot prove God made miracles or Jesus made water to wine. They're two different things. That's reality versus imaginary. You're talking about situations like it's very frustrating because it's like there's a difference, you know? Like, I don't know, the whole like, oh, you know, I had to learn science and math, and then what's the difference between learning religion? Those things matter in life. It's a big difference. Whenever you're suffering and going, like, for instance, it's so frustrating. When it comes down to it, we all have personal beliefs. I'm not going to believe in a sky daddy I never seen. as a child, I understood it was BS, and as an adult, I understand it so much more.
So you're not going to believe in things that are not seen? That means you can't believe in consciousness. You can't believe in love. You can't believe in. There's a lot of science that recognizes things that can't be seen. All right, there are things that that are in space. There are laws of the universe that can't be seen, but they operate. Laws of logic. You can't have a pound of laws of logic, but they're there and they're very real, right? Okay, so when you say I can't believe something that unless I see it, right? Unless I can handle it, unless it can cross through my sensory perceptions, and you're relying completely, totally on that, then that is not scientific, because that's not what science demonstrates. That's not what science measures or utilizes to be able to learn and continue learning the laws in the universe and how they work. In fact, they need some laws that they cannot see in order to continue learning for more science. Okay? So when you say denial of the prophets, that's reality versus what's imaginary. First of all, the history of the Jewish people attests to the claims of their own history as a people and their traditions. And they believe they are direct descendants of their people and prophets and teachings and traditions for thousands of years. You're not just going to dismiss all that history, all that religion, generational tradition, okay? And no real historian would. Okay, so, and secondly, you can't make an argument for what is real versus imaginary until you establish what is your grounding for those things. What is your epistemology? How do you learn things? How do you know what you know is what you know? Right? You take for granted what you say is reality, but could you be stuck in a matrix? Okay, by what standard do you say there is objective truth to what you perceive to be true? And what's the source of that objectivity? Okay, is it eternal? Is it all just you and your perception? Okay, how do you know you can even trust your soul perception? What grounds it in truth and reality? Could you be wrong about your perceptions? What about the next person next to you? How is it that you can both perceive and be on point at the same time? Or can you? Or are you? Right? You can't seen. You said you can't seen. You haven't seen God or touched him. Okay? Yet he exists. Well, why would you assume reality is just what you can perceive? Could you be wrong about your perceptions? You know, there are people out there that perceive themselves to be Superman. Okay? Just about, how do you know the differences between you and them? Okay? Just about anyone would say, yes, I can be wrong. Therefore, you can't have 100% confidence in your perceptions if you can be wrong about everything, because you could be wrong about them too. If you say no, then what upholds that certainty? What does that universal object truth come, that objective truth, where does that come from, and what is its source? Is it you? Are you that source? You would have to be eternal. Are you all knowing and all truth? Right? So, I mean, these are questions that people just take for granted and they just don't want to answer them.
Mr. Chris, reply to. I mean, give me an example, by the way. My bad to cut you off, but what do you mean? Because, like, you're like, I hope something spectacular and spiritual happens to you. Anything spectacular and spiritual, I can explain. Like, you, like all the miracles that at one point people believe, you can explain with science.
Necessarily the whole Final Destination movie kind of situation.
The problem is, no matter what, these things that we believe are imaginary just as much as Superman and Batman and Spider-Man, just because they're written down and people believe them. Like, think about it. In about 2,000 years, just because people believe in Spider-Man doesn't mean Stan Lee was a prophet, doesn't mean that Marvel was the written down of history. All it means is that.
So while he's talking about, whoa, how did you get indoctrinated? He's using those silly second-rate atheist arguments that we've seen on YouTube now for the past almost 20 years. And he's using those lame, well, what if, some people will think Spider-Man is true. And it's like, okay, are you still using those lame arguments? I mean, you're going to ignore the history and the study of scriptures and religion and people who existed in the past and made claims and all that stuff, and the whole New Testament text, which is, more information in history than we have for anything for its time, and you're going to ignore that, and you're gonna throw all that history out, okay, and just deny all those claims and all those belief systems and all that philosophy and all, come on. You're gonna take a whole swath of human existence away from you, because although some people are very simplistic, they don't realize that most of human history, if not all, is centered in depends upon a lot of religion, okay, and historic religious beliefs, right? It's how a lot of things have gotten started, and human civilization has ridden on all of this philosophical thinking, religious thinking. You can't erase it from human history. So you have to. Some of this philosophy has been integrated into a lot of some of this religion into philosophy. So you have to continue studying these things, or else you will just end up having a unilateral thinking and ignorance, because you'll forget about the questions and the answers of life that have come down to us from human history for swaths of our time, human time here on this earth. And you're willing to just toss that out and compare that to Marvel Comics and and Spider-Man and Superman. Okay? That is the caliber of your argumentation. And no serious scholar takes that type of, that's YouTube scholarship, that's YouTuber mentality from 15 years ago.
That people have been indoctrinated to believe in imaginary things. It's imaginary. None of the things that a religion has made is practical, and in and of itself makes sense.
So there's nothing more practical than the morality that has come down to us from religion, okay? And how we raise and how we structure our families and our civilizations and how we keep order and how we construct laws. All of that is based upon law systems and ethics that found their start in human history and in human life by way of religious thought. Okay, so you see how it's simplistic and silly it is to think this way and just to dismiss stuff like that. He's gonna toss out the baby with the bathwater. More than that, he's going to just take. He's going to burn down the libraries and everything, and he's going to stick to his YouTube.
Think about it. You haven't seen God, you haven't touched God, yet God exists. It's a mental situation. It's all in our minds. Our imagination is the most powerful thing in the world, because that's what's changed us. We wanted to fly, so we built airplanes. We wanted comfort, so we built God. Do you see my point?
I understand that. I have.
Are you coping with your beliefs, or are you just simply what it is? Because it's just coping in my mind. We want to say, oh, we don't just die and bio disintegrate. We simply go to afterlife with golden. Think about that. The description of heaven is ridiculous. The description of afterlife is ridiculous. How unfortunate that we're so simple-minded creatures, in my opinion. And by the way, here in a second, we're going to hit the message.
That's electrician. We're chums on.
Give us comfort, because we're simple creatures. That sound, in and of itself, it's a coping mechanism, which I get, but I live in reality, and reality is so much more real.
So that's another thing, right? He says, I live in reality, and reality is so much more real. But first, if it's a coping mechanism, is way better than the subjective reality mechanism and belief system and worldview that has pervaded and has demonstrated to be a disaster in the Western world as secularism has increased. Okay? Suicide is up. Marriages are down. Procreation is down. Less families, more identity issues, all of that stuff. I mean, I don't have the time to list the damage that secularism and the anti-God worldview has done and plagued upon humanity in our Western world, where the way it was and the building of it in previous generations, in recent generations. Okay, we see that, right? We see that. So the question is, he says, I live in reality, and reality is so much more. But you're living, and you're saying, calling religion or rather, in this case, Christianity as a crutch, as a coping mechanism. But even I think it was a 2018 study that stated that even if you didn't believe in a God, right, you're probably better off in life if you do believe, if you live as though you believed, because even the living as even if you lie to yourself, you'll probably live a better life. This was literally a study, and I'm going to have to dig that up, and I'm going to have to put it somewhere where I can demonstrate the link. How people have demonstrated that secularism is just this nihilistic propensity that comes out of secularism. Okay, no, where does that hope come from if the logical conclusion is there's no intrinsic value for life? Okay, it's not life producing. Okay, it's not life sustaining. So you can preach it all you want while you're standing on the earth, but the projection of you and your kind and that mentality doesn't last. It doesn't have, you just can't see the view down the line from where you're standing. You just don't see it, but it's producing, you think it's liberating from authoritarianism, which you've defined as authoritarianism, when in fact all it is order. You're fighting against order. You're not fighting against totalitarianism. It's like you're arguing with someone who's running out of road and they're driving past a sign that says road, no road ahead. And you're just stubbornly driving past it, or walking with a blindfold and you just refuse to take it off. That's really all it is. Okay. And you haven't really defined reality yet. Okay. How do you know your reality is everyone else's reality? Are you speaking for everyone else? A mentality? A mentally ill person thinks they're in reality, right? How do you know you're not mentally ill or hallucinating? Can you be sure you're not? All you can say is because I'm not. That's not good enough. A madman could say that, right? So, yeah.
And the whole the Jewish manuscript and the burning of the buildings, that's just people doing ridiculous things. It could be, it doesn't matter what story it was. People burn books all the time. It doesn't change anything. Now does it?
2 points. I think Jesus was a Spaniard, not a Jew. And 2.
Welcome in.
Well, yeah.
Wait a second. We'll hit the messages. And I'll try not to not play them all the way. I'll play them all the way. But please don't be ridiculous with the messages. Let's just live in reality. And I think that's what it is. As a black man, I have to live in reality. Like race. God never saved my people from slavery. Never saved my people from Jim Crow. Never saved my people from anything. Just like God didn't save white people from anything. Am I wrong? Am I right? When you need God the most, where is he? Nowhere. In our minds.
Well, he denies God. Why would God do anything for someone who's denying him? For starters, if you don't believe in him, your situation is so much worse. Your situation states that bad things happen. Well, they're not really bad. Your position, your logical position is that there's no, that it's just why, you're saying, where was God when these bad things happen? Because they're not bad. So why should God show up? They're not bad because you don't think they're bad. And if you thought they were bad, you'd give a definition for what's bad. It can't be what God calls bad because God is the one you're rejecting. So then by what standard are you calling anything bad? It's just a rock falling on top of another rock. It's just a leopard eating its next meal. Okay, the bunny rabbit just grabs them, and that's not bad. So this assumes you have a foundation of what's right and wrong, or bad and good. As an atheist, you have even less to answer for these things, because you have admittedly, you believe that the world and all of existence has no purpose and therefore no intrinsic value. So under your worldview, if we're not any more valuable than rocks, why should we care? Why should we care what rocks do to rocks? If we're just animals, why do we care what a starving leopard does to another animal? It captures and rips apart. So if the narrative of Scripture tells us that mankind is fallen and therefore there's evil in the world, why are you still asking the question and skipping the better understanding and worldview explanation of what's going on in this world? Why have you skipped the better answer? Why do you refuse to acknowledge it? You can't keep asking this question over and over again and not have stubbornly rejected the answer. Okay, that comes from the beginning of time. So then it's about your rejection of the answers and not that you haven't had an explanation or no one's answered. Okay, it's not ignorance, it's willful ignorance. You don't want to believe, right? So when you say where was God during Jim Crow? God told you that man was fallen, didn't he? He told you way back in the beginning of the book. He told you this. You reject it. So what? If you reject something, you should have something better to replace it. And you don't, because you don't have a grounding for your worldview. You can't protect, you can't defend your worldview, because you would have to make sense and you have to answer to the evil. First, you have to say why it's evil. And then you have to say, okay, so then if we're just rocks, then what? If we're stardust, we're going to be here today, gone tomorrow. I mean, sure, you can have an emotion about it or an opinion about it, but it doesn't mean it's true. It just means it's subjective, it's arbitrary. You know, this guy shouldn't do that to that guy, but it still happens. Why is it happening? And what's the conclusion of it? People that talk this way cannot have this conversation. They can't have the deep adult conversations about these things.
Before just before you hit the messages, when I said right prayer, it doesn't mean it's going to necessarily work. But if you're praying for money all the time, you got to admit that that's a greedy pursuit.
How when you speak about certain things, it's very vague and impractical in a sense, because in many ways reality bites. We still have to go to work. We still have to pay our bills without God. Let's hit the messages before they rack up too much.
Caution, real.
A lot of people say that religion would start a lot of wars. Catholic crusades, Christian crusades. People would literally kill people and try to convert them. I don't know what else to say from there. We shall continue.
So to have that extreme skeptical stance has already been demonstrated long ago that is just illogical, okay, and self-defeating. Okay, if you ask yourself, your reality, okay, so but how do you know what is real? Okay, for that you have to have an objective standard to be able to determine that what you're seeing is real. Is it possible that what you're seeing is not real? Is it?
Yeah, a bunch of religious hocus pocus. Is it possible you're not seeing what you're believing? Oh my God. Do you guys hear how you sound? Like, there's a difference between seeing an apple versus seeing God. You can, oh gosh. Why are people like this? Grown adults believing in imaginary things. I'm very disappointed in this. Can you believe
I thought I was being...
Yes, I could see an apple if I see an apple. Like, oh God. Ridiculous humans.
I thought I was being kind of logical with what I was saying earlier, as to put it in.
Come on now, that's like saying using a telescope for detail versus like seeing spirits and things. Cats see more colors because they evolved to see more colors. We don't.
They died.
We can't use that as a coping mechanism or justification why we believe in a sky daddy. Like, the whole Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. All that's just sky daddy nonsense, in my opinion. Because like realistically,
I hear you there. You're taking a practical view, and I
we
100%
have to
understand.
be, because when I pay my
Yeah.
bills to my landlord, there's no God. It's just me working for 80 plus hours in order to take care of myself. When I use my money to go to the grocery store, there is no God. You could say, well, God made the fruits in order for them to be harvested, in order for capitalism to exist. That's just a mumbo jumbo, realistically. Because if there was no God, life would be how it is.
So, but how do you know it's not true? you haven't proven that it's not true. It's your opinion. It's just an opinion that says, well, no, that's just not real. It's not real. But how can you prove that it's not true? How do you know that there isn't something greater? Okay. Something greater happened in order to put the fruit in the tree in the ground in, on the earth, and thus forth over and over again. And you are forced to start to have a conversation about beginnings and how these things are here. So it becomes a little bit more of a mature and deeper thinking conversation than where you wanted to leave it at. Okay, all of these things, all of these concepts, people will try to simplify this, and then they want to say reality. Oh, it's because of reality. It's because of this. But by that same nature, you have to ask yourself, what is reality? Because your opinions and your positions and your presuppositions are based on your exactly on that the presuppositions of what you believe. They're birthed somewhere, and so what you believe or perceive to be real are based on presuppositions. Okay, and what you're willing to believe. Okay, that has to have an origin, and it goes further back than just, well, yeah, it's just reality. It's just because.
In my opinion.
Well,
we wouldn't have carbon, so we wouldn't even be alive without trees. So to say that
but
God
yeah,
made trees,
Oh, so you believe in miracles?
it's only a coping mechanism in order to explain things. At one point, people didn't understand thunderstorms, and they say God was angry. Now we understand polarities and the fact of how tornadoes work, and in and of itself, the chemistry of, I guess you could say, the planet. It goes to show that ignorance is bliss, and I don't like ignorance. Welcome in.
But it's humanity that has the understanding and the ability to be able to continue learning, right? Right? What's wrong with that? That shows an ability in humans that we don't find in animals. You don't see antelopes creating science buildings in universities, do you? Right? So why is that happening? They're deeper things, have deeper reasons, different questions. People cannot be. If you want to go back into the conversation of how humans evolved, that's going to inextricably take you to a deeper conversation. But some people here want to just minimize those things. They want to keep things simple because it's easy to reject things in a simple way rather than to have deeper thought and conversations on these things.
Jamal G. Where was God during slavery? Where was God during Jim Crow? Where was God during any massacre on the planet for humans? God is there for the big stuff.
That's not my name, brother. That's not my name, bro. My name is
Go ahead
James.
and pronounce your name.
So I feel like we like.
So again, where was God during Jim Crow? Where was God during all these sad things, these things that happen in human history, right? Well, again, it assumes you have a foundation for what's wrong. It assumes you have a foundation for what is bad, what is best for humanity. Okay? So perhaps what you think is best for humanity isn't, some people don't believe. They don't believe that they don't have the same opinion. You have even less to answer for these things because you admittedly believe that the world and all of existence has no purpose. So if it has no purpose, the logical conclusion of that is that it doesn't matter. God doesn't need to be there because, right? There's no God, so there's no purpose. We're just going to blow up and burn up in a couple of thousand years, in another billion years, the earth will blow up, and none of this matters. That's your stance. So why are you complaining? See, that's the problem, that the secularist and the atheistic worldview cannot even biatch. They can't even biatch about these problems because it's just a subjective, okay, concern. Okay? It just boils down to that. There's no objective problem with evils. Okay? So why do they complain so much? Right? At the same time, they reject the better answer. Okay? They reject the better answer to all of these things. Okay? So yeah, so that's pretty much all I wanted to bring out today. I wanted to feature this gentleman in his atheistic worldview, because he's here on stereo, and I don't know how new he is, but I don't think I might have heard him sometime before, but this is the type of mentality that continues on pervasive in our culture today, and these answers have to be able to be responded to, okay, because they're absurd, they're limiting, they're self-defeating, but they're still out there. They're still out there, and people still think this way. If he was able to sit down and really go through the arguments and have better responses to this and demonstrate that he understands these arguments, then at least things would be a lot better, and he would go somewhere else with this. Maybe his arguments would evolve into more mature, but as it stands now, it's too easy to just dismiss, and no. Okay? And so learning stops, and self